caregiving is the hands down the hardest job you will ever do.
Welcome to Better Together podcast, produced and directed by our Hospice of South Central Indiana, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to making every moment count. We share real stories about hospice, palliative, and personal care, provided in 22 counties all over South Central Indiana. I am your host and president, Steph Cain. Today, we are with Sarah Stevens. She's manager of support services here at our hospice. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Sarah, tell us a little bit about your background and what brings you to serve our community at our hospice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up here in Columbus, always, had kind of heard about hospice and what it was. But my grandma was actually on service when I was in high school, trying to decide kind of what I wanted to do. And I was able to kind of experience that, learn what social work was, and kind of learn the wonderful care that hospice is able to provide. So I decided to go to school to become a social worker and got my master's and am a licensed clinical social worker now, and also have my advanced hospice and palliative care certification, and really just am able to see every day, making every moment count. And yeah, I just love it. Love serving the community I grew up in.
Wow. Well, we're so blessed to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. You lead our support services, and one thing that's different about hospice care versus other patient care is that we take care of the whole family. We take care of the patient, their loved ones, their extended family, and you lead our support services. Could you tell us a little bit about what that involves?
Yeah, absolutely. So our support service team, it's consisted of our wonderful social workers, our wonderful chaplains, and our wonderful bereavement team. So while we do serve our patients, and that is oftentimes, what we do, we're also able to really serve the family unit, whether that's daughter, son, mom, dad, grandparents, kids, and really just come alongside them and support them through the hospice journey.
Okay, awesome. And I know we have a robust bereavement program.
Yeah, we do. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you for that work. Caregiving is what we're going to talk about today. It can be both meaningful and exhausting. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see family caregivers facing?
Absolutely. So I always say to patients and families, and I know my team does as well, caregiving is the hands down the hardest job you will ever do. It takes so much out of you in so many different realms, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and trying to balance all of those emotions can be very, very difficult. You're almost like having so many plates in the air and you're trying not to drop everything, because normal life doesn't stop. Your other commitments don't stop. So now you have this caregiving on top of that. So trying to navigate all of that can be very, very challenging at times. And you're trying to handle, your own emotions, but you're also handling your loved ones' emotions too, because they're sick and they're tired and they're not feeling well. So you're trying to support them while also trying to navigate everything yourself. And if you don't come from a medical background and you step into this world where nurses and doctors start using these really big words and what does that mean, it can be scary at times too.
Yeah, I like how you're approaching it and using the word emotions. I'm hearing that a couple of times because often I would think of caregiving as being very physical. And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
It's a heavy lift, literally, and emotionally, for sure. And so that piece, how do our support services team help caregivers in that way?
So you're right. There is that physical component, but the emotional component is just as important. So our support services team can really be there to kind of provide education and tools on self-care or coping skills to try to make that a little bit easier, right? We can also provide this sense of safe space for them. We're a third-party person to just really be there that they can bounce ideas off or explore their emotions with, or just cry, because sometimes our caregivers, try to remain strong in front of their loved ones. I don't want them to see that I'm struggling. So to have this person that they're able to confide in and just cry and let those emotions out. We want to be that support for them.
So good. What practical advice would you share, with caregivers or folks listening who might feel overwhelmed, or maybe they see a friend or neighbor being overwhelmed, in the caregiving role?
Yeah. Being overwhelmed is what we hear quite often, and sometimes they feel trapped and don't know where to go. So really the first thing that I always tell people is slow down, notice your breathing, take a few deep breaths, and focus on something that you can control today. Because watching someone that you love, going through the most difficult thing they may have faced yet, you can't control that. So trying to find something in your life that you can control, or that makes you, feel the sense of control. And once you do that, really just maybe identifying one thing today that you're grateful for so that you can focus on the positive of life, right? And the other thing I always say too is don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, I think as caregivers, you want to try to do it all and be all. And it's such a hard job, like we have talked about. So, leaning on your people, leaning on your village for support. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I really need help with this, because your village wants to help you, right? But sometimes they don't exactly know how.
On a personal note, I remember when my dad was at end of life, and he was in another state. And so North Carolina, I was in the hospital and staying through the night, and our kids were little at the time. And, it was so, one of the nurses said to me, and I'll never forget it. She said, you might want to go home and sleep and shower, and he's not going to remember it. That you were here, but your kids will. And it was interesting because my dad, did end up going home before, he passed. And I asked him the question. I said, I was there all that time. He's like, I don't remember that.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about something unique to our hospice that is our hospice center and respite opportunities. So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so blessed here to have this inpatient facility that we're able to really be able to provide respite support. And we often, as support services, encourage that for families. So when a loved one is on hospice care, they're able to have 5 nights of respite. And that's really to where their loved ones can come here and be well cared for, while you just mentally, emotionally, physically take that break that you need and that you deserve. So we try to encourage that as often as we can.
Yeah. Those 5 days, I think the first time we'll see families a little tentative. They don't know. They feel guilty maybe dropping mom or dad or their loved one off. And our staff just loves on them. Our volunteers sit with them. They have activities. And we do a really good job being sure that they're not only just comfortable, but they're feeling really loved. And then families are, when there's caregiver breakdown, they feel, better and better, allowing their loved one to come for respite. So that is a gift. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you share a story with us about a caregiver who found strength and comfort through our hospice and the support of the team?
Absolutely. So being a caregiver, I don't think I had mentioned this earlier, can look multiple different ways, right? You can be that physical caregiver where you're providing that physical support in the home, or your loved one can actually be at a facility. And to me, you're still being a caregiver to them, right? You're still having that emotional burden. We oftentimes, but I specifically remember this story where a daughter was caring for her father for 6-7 years, and had started taking a toll. He needed more increased care support physically, and she just wasn't able to provide that. But she had this guilt hanging over her head, like, I'm his daughter. I'm supposed to be taking care of him. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And really working through that and being able to say, okay, let's talk about what are your options. What would it look like to have people come into the home to help you? What would it look like to maybe put dad into a facility, and all of those things? And I remember we were having this conversation about, for so long, you have been only his caregiver and you haven't been his daughter. And she instantly started crying and she was like, you're right. I really just want to be able to be his daughter again. And so that, to me, is what it's all about, giving them permission to feel that support so that they can be the best loved one that they can be.
Yeah, thank you. So how do you see caregivers change during the time they walk with hospice, maybe from where they started on the continuum to throughout their loved one's journey? Do you see them change?
Absolutely. Sometimes the first meeting, they're nervous and they're scared and they're overwhelmed and they don't really know where to go from there. But as we continually go, have more visits with them, provide more support to them, provide more education to them, they become more confident in what they're doing, more comfortable in the care that they're able to provide their loved one. I think we strive to make them feel like they have a whole team behind them. And so I do see that caregivers do become more comfortable. They oftentimes say, I don't know how I would do this without you, or you mean the world to me, you're angels, you've provided all of this care. And so caregivers really at that moment, they feel more comfortable. And then when their loved one does end up passing, they still have that grief support that they need.
So good. Well, Sarah, this has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Better Together Podcast, a podcast dedicated to making every moment count. Thank you for listening. Please like us and share this episode on your social media channels. If you have a question or you'd like to learn more about a specific topic, you can find us at ourhospice.org or call 812-314-8083. Until the next time, remember that we are better together, making every single moment count.